All right. Hi there, everybody. Jonathan Levy here. And in this video, I'm going to share with my friend here, Dima Koslov, the power of writing and how it can influence you and your career, whether or not you're a writer. Stick around to learn more. Hey there, everybody. Jonathan Levy here from the Becoming Superhuman podcast and Superlearner Academy. And I am joined today by Dima Koslov, my friend and fellow Genius Network member. For those of you who don't know Genius, don't know Dima, I'll have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your work and what you do.
Awesome. Thank you for synchronistically having me here today.
Yeah, pleasure.
So a little bit about my work. I run a company called InfluX. The name is the combination of influence and expression based on the belief that your greatest influence comes through your fullest expression. So what we actually do is we do creative design. We build influencer websites and company websites. What we put into that is a lot of creative artistry mixed with direct response marketing. So like how can we have the fullest essence expression of the person or the brand that we're working with while also making a difference and influence in their marketplace.
Incredible. And you guys have done websites for Joe Polish, Mike Koenig's. Tell us a little bit about your clientele.
Yeah, so most of the bigger influencers within Genius Network, we've done their sites or platforms. Roland Frazier, JJ Virgin, Mike Koenig's, yes, Joe. We did the Genius Network annual event site that brought a lot of people here.
Incredible.
And then previously to that, we did other bigger names like David Bach in the financial industry, Frank Kern in the marketing world.
Incredible.
And pretty much just most of the peeps. We either did them or are working on them, as well as a lot of people that haven't quite gotten that same level of notoriety yet, but who are on their way there, and we've built platforms to help get them there.
Incredible. Now, have you always identified as a writer and a creative? Do you identify as a technologist? I mean, I know you're building websites. Where do you see on the spectrum of poet versus quant?
Yeah, I identify, I would say, as an entrepreneurial artist. So the artistry is really important for me there. I identify with entrepreneur as well, but really entrepreneurial artist. So spoken word poetry is a huge part of my expression. That doesn't make it always directly into the business, but it does make it to influence. This fly really loves me. It does influence the business.
Yeah.
In that it gets me onto stages. It gets me deeper connections with people on a heart-to-heart level through the art that I wouldn't otherwise get. That I end up working with.
So I wanted to ask you, first off, because you come from a culture that I admire very much for its literature and poetry, or the Russian culture, but also because I've heard your spoken word poetry. Now, recently I did a podcast episode. I've done a few podcast episodes on what I call exponential skills, which is like, I believe that not all skills are equal in terms of the value in your life. So, gymnastics will probably help a lot. It's not going to help you as much as people skills, right? Like learning how to interact with people, learning how to build relationships is going to be an exponential skill. And I really believe, after my experience, not only meeting folks like yourself and Joe Polish and other people who've made their whole lives around marketing and writing, but also in just my experience, learning how to shape my thoughts. I believe that writing is one of the ultimate exponential skills. So I'm curious to hear, first, if you agree, it's okay if not, but also how spoken word poetry and writing and kind of developing your linguistic skills has influenced not just your life, but your career.
Yes. So firstly, yes, I agree. That writing is an exponential skill, and I think self-expression is an exponential skill.
Wow.
Writing is one form of that. With writing poetry specifically, I'll give two nuances because I think there's writing overall, including writing poetry, and there's all the benefits of that on a tactical and mental level.
Right.
I think there's two unique nuances that I'll point out here. One is flow, that through learning how to write poetry and rap and spoken word, and there's like a tapping into creative flow that happens there.
Almost like a meditative practice.
Yes. Yeah, that then it's less of like, what do I want to write, and more of what wants to come through me, and how can I be an open vessel for that.
I love that. You know what I realized on a particularly intense psychedelic experience is I finally understood the meaning of art, because I think previously I thought that art was about looking at something and going, wow, that's really beautiful. What I realized is art is why it has significance and meaning to human beings is it allows people to look and see something that is inside of themselves. That and what makes an artist, to your point, is not someone who's able to actually draw well or create well. It's who's able to open the floodgates
Yes.
and allow that creative spirit to come out of kind of the human essence. And that's, and really who's able to communicate that essence more than who's able to dream up an MC Escher drawing. It's who's able to get that out and put it on paper, or put it into music, or put it into, it takes incredible skills to translate that into something that other people can now see, hear, smell, taste, in the case of culinary art. So I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, and the artist's way is like really just continue to open yourself to the expression coming through.
Right.
And then the second nuance I mentioned too, so the first one is that flow, and then the second one is healing. Joe Polish has his Artist for Addicts and Genius Recovery, and I think this all plays into that, where for me, learning spoken word as a form of expression has been so healing. Oftentimes it's actually come through my healing process. Like my best work has come through pain, and then me feeling so much frustration and pain with life or business or relationship or something's going on in my heart, and I can't seem to like navigate through life in the right way in that moment, and I sit down and write, and the pain comes out through rhymes, and then that starts to evolve into like going from pain to purpose, from darkness to dharma. So a lot of my pieces have aspects that meet people in their pain, because everybody has their own, they have different stories, but everybody has their own pain, and their own journeys and stories of pain. So when I can meet people there by fully sharing my own, and then I go on my own journey of bringing that from pain to purpose and healing, because that's what the art is doing for me, then I get to bring people on that experience as well.
I never thought about that. I mean, I think we think about expression as like just expression for expression's sake. I think the ball never dropped for me that the artist is also healed by the art. I think we all understand that people are healed by being able to identify with the art. When they can look at an artist's work, especially like a troubled artist like a Hemingway or an Edgar Allan Poe, and go, another great thinker had this, I'm not broken just because, Elon Musk has suffered from anxiety and stuff like that. And to be able to identify with someone else, but also that the artist, him or herself, is being healed through the process of developing the work. That's really eye-opening.
There's a quote, it's some, I think, pseudo-biblical passage, but it's if you bring forth what is within you, it will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you.
I love that.
And it comes back to like, if you're an open channel for whatever wants to work itself through you, which in this case is art and writing that we're talking about, then that's what ends up creating your life and saving you from the darkness. If you don't bring that forth, and you choose a life where you block that, then that's what will actually destroy you. That's what will destroy your life, because you'll end up wallowing in the darkness without knowing it.
I love that. Dima, I want to ask you, for people who don't feel that they're particularly gifted in poetry, I think there's a huge barrier to entry with art, because art has this word, and there are people who are artists, and therefore, unlike with athletics, we can go, well, yeah, there's people on the Olympics, but me, I just go for my 20-minute run in the morning. And I think it's very different with art. People they're not kind of dilettantes the way that they are about sport or cooking, right? Like, there are Michelin chefs, and yet we all try to dabble a little bit in the kitchen, most of us. And yet with art, I don't see that happening. I don't see people just drawing for drawing's sake as a dilettante, as an enthusiast, or as a hobbyist.
Right.
So how do people break that barrier? How did you get into spoken word poetry and rap, and how can we give people a takeaway to just do something today to try this healing and this flow process and all these benefits?
Right. I think it's important to mention that as kids, we all do that to some extent. To the extent that we're not told not to, we all express ourselves creatively and artistically in some way before we have this idea of like the identity of an artist. And as soon as we become familiar with an identity of an artist, and that identity fits a certain box and has a certain expression and expectation in society, and we no longer fit that identity because we don't think we're a good enough artist, then we stop doing the art, right? It's a similar thing with like, with most people who are entrepreneurs, they don't start their first business through the full identity of I'm an entrepreneur and I'm going to start doing this stuff. Most people start their first business through like seeing an idea, an opportunity, a desire, or something that moves through them, and they start their first business, and then eventually they take on the identity of entrepreneur. So I think it's important to like disidentify from the identity
Of artists.
of artists, and
Yeah.
just like do what you feel like doing and do what wants to move through you, and whatever form that takes. That can take
I love that.
doodles, that can take that can take poetry. You mentioned like there's a kind of this barrier to entry.
Right.
And what I've seen, I was just at a leadership retreat right before getting here, and we did a lot of flow circles around the fire.
Okay.
And there was me and this other guy there who do freestyle rap, and then everybody else in the circle had never freestyled before
Cool.
in their lives, and they each went because the space was created for safety, and they each went and they had pretty good rhymes. It was amazing. And I've seen people in workshops, similar thing, like I give them a prompt, and then they end up writing a
love
piece
that.
and then sharing it with the group, even though they've never like written poetry before.
Right.
So I think it's like whatever expression it is, whether it's drawing or poetry or creative writing
Yeah.
or any form of music, it's all within us. And if you don't know what it is, you just go play with it. And as you play with it, don't worry about the identity of the artist being
Right.
good in some way. Just go do the thing and see what moves you.
Right. And I mean, did you have any formal training? Did you read any books, or did you just go into this and play with it?
When I was like 13, 14, I rapped.
Okay.
And then I stopped that because at like 15, because I got out of the lifestyle that associated me with as
Sure.
a young teenager. And then like 10 years later, when I was 25, I picked it back up. And it was that exact thing I mentioned earlier. There was so much pain
Yeah.
inside of me that I just had to express it through rhyme. And I expressed it, and it came through, and there was this like beautiful piece that ended up being formed that I
that.
then like wrote,
Love that.
recorded, posted that same day, and I got good social feedback that I was like, cool, I'm gonna go do this thing.
Yeah.
But it was like years before I even started to say I'm a spoken word artist. I would just
So cool.
occasionally share some poetry because it was just
So
a thing I did, not a thing I was.
So cool. And in your business, I mean, besides these huge potential personal benefits, you mentioned workshops. I mean, is this also transitioning into your business life, or this is a tool in your personal life?
More in my personal life. It hasn't formally transitioned into business
Okay.
life. I have done some workshops around this, mostly at
Very
other
cool.
events where I've just felt really called to teach this. So I see
Very
that
cool.
in my timeline. And then the other thing that it's done for me in business is now that I'm at a point where I can perform and I can get in front of an audience. I
Yeah.
love getting in front of business audiences, and then I end up integrating my poetry into whatever talks I'm doing.
Oh, yeah,
like
I
you've
love
seen
the
me
one
at
that you
Genius
gave at
Network. That's
Genius
what
Network.
led to like this interview right here. If
Yeah.
you hadn't seen my performance, we wouldn't be having this conversation in
Totally.
this way.
And I have to say, I wish maybe we could cut in a clip for the YouTube audience, but it was like, it was almost like exactly like what we were talking about with art. It was like I had experienced so much during that meeting. There was so much going through my head. I was having so many thoughts, and you were able, I think your genius was you were able to pull it out and put it out and express what I was feeling so that I could almost contextualize my own experience through your contextualization of the experience that we'd all shared. And it was this really profound moment where I understood like almost the practicality of the medium. I was like, wow, you really caused me to think about this in a way that was cohesive. And it's like you expressed a lot about the value of what we were doing in that room and the emotions and the sense of belonging. And it really helped formulate my own understanding. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, absolutely, brother.
Awesome. Dima
Sweet.
Koslov,
Well,
absolute
You want to do a quick like 1 minute or 90-second piece?
Please,
Then
that would be
We'll
awesome.
end with that. Awesome. So this one I've always thought was an ode to entrepreneurs because I wrote it based on the Steve Jobs commencement speech, kind of
Love
like
it.
channeled that in through rhyme. And then recently I found that it's also really relevant on just like the spiritual awakening journey, that these lyrics mean just as much for that as they mean for the entrepreneurial journey.
Wow.
So the piece is called Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish.
Oh my God. It's like my favorite quote.
Yeah. You never know the last breath you will take. So face death every day. 'Cause in the face of death, everything falls away, leaving only what is truly important to you. Your beauty, your story, your truth, your music, your soul, what you do as unity forms within you. And your music is pouring from you till every last bit of your fuel and your courage is used. And even when it feels like your hustle is useless, just remember that nothing is useless And there's a reason that you've been suffering through this, because it's something that moves you to remember the truth that you've got nothing to lose and nothing to prove. So just do what you love and love what you do. Trust in your music. Fuck your excuses. Stay hungry. Stay foolish.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dima Koslov.